The Leader of the National Party.
Speaker, I move the motion that is in my name, that this House condemns the McGowan Government for its gold royalty cash grab when other revenue options are available, and we note the Premier's 2014 comments that gold by its nature can often be very marginal, a lot of work, a lot of processing, a lot of employment, but at the end of the day, costs are high, and if this royalty comes in, mines will close and jobs will be lost. Mr Speaker, we are having this debate today because the Labor Party lied to the electorate. Let's be clear, the Labor Party was elected on a lie, and in the spirit of partnership, you will hear from both the National Party and the Liberal Party, because we are at one on this issue. Absolutely without doubt. The Labor Party was elected on a lie, and we will hold them to account for the promises that they have made that they now seek to pay for by targeting the sectors that cannot afford it. The Labor government has targeted the gold sector because they went to the election without a plan. We heard that during question time. They went to the election without a plan for the state's finances. They were dishonest and made promises to the West Australian public that they never intended to keep, Mr Speaker. The Premier and his Treasurer, then in opposition, were absolutely crystal clear about the state of the finances. We sat in this place, albeit on opposite sides of the House, and listened to them critique the finances again and again and again. No one can argue that the Treasurer did not understand the mechanisms, levers and triggers that were impacting on our state budget. They knew the GST was broken, the GST system was broken beyond repair. They understood the fluctuations in the iron ore sector and the fact that it created enormous revenue downgrades and punched enormous holes in our state budget. They knew that we had dealt with the biggest population increase over the past 10 years that this state had ever seen. And they knew that as a state government we needed to be able to continue to offer the services and build the infrastructure that supported those 500,000 people moving into this state. And they knew that we had to negotiate wages at a time where we saw public servants bleeding from the public sector because the mining sector was paying very attractive wages, and good on them. But it put an enormous pressure on the government to maintain the people we needed in our government services to make sure that we didn't lose them to a sector that ultimately has now corrected itself. They knew that we had to negotiate those wages. They knew, the Labor Party knew, and they understood the state's finances. They knew, and they did not take a plan to the election. Instead, and this is what we said outside this morning to the people standing in front of us from the gold sector that told us exactly what this cash grab will do. Instead, they crossed their fingers behind their back and went out and promised millions of dollars of promises that they had no plan to pay for. And they did more than that. They actually rubbed it in the face of everyone that they would later come back and say, sorry, we didn't mean it. We had our fingers crossed, Mr Speaker. We didn't mean it when we stood on the front steps of Parliament and said we will never increase the gold royalty. We didn't mean it when we said we wouldn't increase taxes, fees and charges. It's not our fault. That's what the Treasurer has been saying today. It's not our fault. We could never have anticipated this, albeit he sat on this side of the House for nearly 8.5 years and critiqued and understood very well the triggers that caused us to face enormous challenges in delivering the services and balancing the budget. The Treasurer said that he would pay down debt like paying a mortgage off your house, your household mortgage, that there'd be no increases in taxes, there'd be no new fee rises, no new levies. Now in government, the Premier has said that the Treasurer's budget is the best budget in living memory. Well, I can promise you, Premier, that there is not one person I've spoke to since the budget has come down that thinks this is a good budget. It is a budget full of pain, Premier, a budget full of pain. And the reality is that the Labor Party's first budget is littered with broken promises. You are increasing taxes, you are increasing the gold royalty, and you are increasing the water and power charges for households and businesses. Well, we're not going to stand by and let you do that. We will hold you to account. And where we can, we will absolutely block your ability to deliver on those broken promises. You had no plan. So this is about the choices you made in framing your budget and the furphy and the con job that you are selling to the community about the fact that this is about paying down debt, about reducing the debt in the forward estimates, is quite frankly ridiculous. There is no change in debt. There is no reduction in debt. This is about paying for your election promises, and you were extravagant. You were extravagant. And I would like to know why the Premier said with such conviction in 2014 that if a gold royalty came in, mines would close and jobs would be lost. I would like to know what's changed. What's changed since he said that a royalty increase was a version of a federal mining tax, ripping money out of a sector that can least afford it? And what's changed since he said it was basically a waste of time to put up the gold royalty because we lose most of it through GST? What's changed? Absolutely nothing, except that now the Labor Party doesn't need the votes of the people they were lying to. They don't need the votes. They've dropped them like a hot potato, abandoned them, and they are in hot pursuit of their election commitments like Metronet and all of the promises that they've made in each of these electorates, above and beyond what was in the forward estimates already. The government says they're making the tough decisions to reduce debt, but this is absolutely not proven in their state budget. It's there in black and white. And the $392 million that's coming from the gold sector, which will put jobs and future investment at risk, and we heard that this morning from the sector themselves, and we have done over the past month. That is to pay for their extravagant election promises, and that is why the Nationals oppose this cash grab. We understand the gold sector, and we understand what makes it tick. We understand the value of the sector and the principles on which investors in that sector make decisions. And our team stood shoulder to shoulder with that sector in 2014 after the royalty review was done, and we said we do not agree. And the principle remains. Now in 2017, we stand up and say the same thing. And it might not be popular in all corners of the state, but I tell you what, it's the right decision because we have access to information that perhaps others don't, that the broader community do not. And it is incumbent on us as an opposition to make sure that those facts are known to combat some of the very conveniently phrased turns of phrase that the Treasurer is coming up with to justify their position. We championed, and I would, sorry Mr Speaker, just like to point out that the Nats have never been an enemy of the mining sector, and that is something that we want to make very clear and have done in this House on occasion after occasion. We championed and introduced the exploration incentive scheme. We invested significantly in the regions that many of these companies seek to attract workers and employ and invest in. We've been at the forefront of revitalising those communities. We cannot be accused of being budget wreckers because we put forward an alternative to the community of Western Australia. And that alternative is still there on the table, but time and time again, the Treasurer and the Premier and the Labor government refuse to entertain going and sitting down with BHP and Rio Tinto and actually having a discussion about something that really would give them the opportunity to reduce debt without putting jobs and investment at risk. It really would. So we have not walked away from our commitment to modernise the legacy state agreements, and we have continued to pursue that because there is a choice. You can have $392 million from a sector that can't afford it and it will shut down mines and it will cost jobs, or you could have $7.2 billion, Treasurer, from Rio Tinto and BHP with minimal impact on their bottom line and no problem in terms of their continuing investment going forward. They are in a completely different stage of the development of their industry, and they are not apples for apples. And people that I talk to in the community understand that. They understand it. So we know that the gold sector can't afford a royalty hike. We know that Labor isn't paying down debt. There is so much pain for so little gain in this budget, and this is all about your extravagant election commitments. And that is why the Nationals have been out front and centre, making sure that everyone involved in that sector knows that we cannot support the measures that are in this government's budget. They are unfair and cruel, and we will do everything we can to make sure we stop this royalty hike from going ahead.